Welcome to r/Tales from Tech Support, where we get to have a little chuckle at the technologically disadvantaged, like me. I'm Uncle Reddit, and have I got a story for you. Well, happy Monday, guys. I hope you have a great day today. Let's read some stories. Now, she knows what it's like. I work on an IT service desk, and my partner works in a food shop. She was off yesterday and kept getting called by her manager. She answered on the third time, and her manager asked, "How do I use this CCTV?" Bearing in mind this is a system that she could use multiple times a day, and she's worked in that shop for a good few years now, so she should know exactly how to use it. She asked how to log on to it. My partner talked her through it multiple times. Turns out she was trying to log in as an admin instead of a user. Once she eventually got to the user login, she couldn't remember the password, even though it is and always has been the name of the shop ID number, and a full stop. My partner reminded her of this, and still after multiple tries she couldn't get logged in, and in saying the password wasn't working. She eventually got on after about 10 minutes and hung up with my partner. She came and told me, and I just laughed and said, "Yup, welcome to my life, every call." Oh, trust me, you tech guys and women, ladies, you tech people don't have the market cornered on after-hours phone calls for idiotic questions. Trust me on that one. How Wi-Fi turns into mashed potatoes. I'm a digital nomad, and I moved into an Airbnb, a garden apartment attached to a house. I'll be at for a month on Sunday. The Wi-Fi was crappy, low speeds, drops often. Now this isn't abnormal, especially when I'm staying outside the country, but I'm in Florida. This is especially confusing because there's a Google Nest Wi-Fi access point 2 feet from my laptop. I messaged the hosts about it, and they have no idea what to do, although they're very kind and know they need to fix it. In these situations, I can either pretend I don't know anything about tech and hope it gets fixed eventually, or try to be helpful. I go back and forth each time, but these hosts were rather nice, let me arrive a day early, and didn't charge me for it. Plus, I'm here a month, and would like good Wi-Fi, so I offered to help. I used to do IT support, but that was a decade ago. It's amazing how things never really change. They had a Nest mesh router connected to the cable modem and router, and 2 other mesh access points elsewhere in the house, which their son had set up. As far as everyone in the family was concerned, it was plugged in and there was a blue light, so it's working. Thus, they were just confused why Wi-Fi sucked on both ends of the house. The host had even ordered a separate internet service for the guest quarters on the opposite side of the house from me, as service was almost non-existent there. When I saw the access point right by me and saw my crappy signal, my assumption was that particular access point had just never been set up. It turns out that all the son had done was plug things in physically and never actually set up the network. We were all using the default cable modem/router network. So I set up the mesh network, advised them on placement and that they order an additional access point, then set that up. Speeds went from 10 to 150 megabits per second at the edges of the house, and the network now covers the entire house and yard. The separate internet got canceled, saving $60 a month. I then got invited to Thanksgiving dinner and to go dragon boating. Wait, dragon boating? Oh, so that's what dragon boating is. Very sadly, I had other Thanksgiving plans, so I was not able to tech support for the entire extended family yesterday, although I still had to fix my mom's printer, ironically by rebooting their router. Well, that was nice. That was kind of wholesome. Yeah, it's amazing how many people think everything is just plug and play. Plug it in, it should work. Most of the time, though, there's an app you got to get on or something, some way to do a setup, an initial setup. And to be honest with you, even with the initial setup, the Google Wi-Fi Nest system, mesh system, isn't that great. Now, I will say, I'm in an old house with plaster walls, so that doesn't help at all. The day I got Joe. This story takes place around 2005, about 15 years before I started actually working in IT. At the time, I was a department lead in one of the processing plants for a large photography company. My department was responsible for very basic retouching of pictures in Photoshop using Wacom tablets. Entry-level stuff that doesn't require any previous experience. I had a 70-plus-year-old guy in my department who basically only worked there to keep busy after retiring from his real career. We'll call him Joe. While Joe wasn't a computer tech, he was very comfortable with the computers and knew a ton about Photoshop. I learned a lot from him over the years. Joe also had a great sense of humor and was the type of person who could talk circles around anyone he met. When he chose to poke fun at someone, which he did often, They usually didn't even know he was joking around with them until several minutes later because he was so quick on his feet. All this meant that it was extremely satisfying that one time I actually got the better of Joe. I was always the go-to guy to fix computer issues in my department, and the several departments that were near mine when people didn't want to open a ticket. One day, Joe calls me over and says he's having trouble with his Wacom tablet. Joe: "Hey, every time I try to use the healing brush, it just leaves this big white smear instead." Me: "Oh, I've seen this before. I know exactly how to fix it. This is going to sound weird, but just bear with me." Joe: "Okay." Me: "First, set down the stylus and stand up." He sets the stylus down on his desk and stands up, expecting me to sit down and take over. Instead, I take a step back. Me: "Okay, now here's the weird part. I want you to turn around in the full circle until you're facing the computer again. Trust me, this always works." He gives me this incredulous look, like I've lost my mind, but he goes along with it. Me: "Perfect, now sit back down and try again." Joe: "But you didn't do anything." Me: "Just try it. Like I said, this always works." He proceeds to pick up the stylus, try again, and when it works, he looks at me like I just pulled a rabbit out of his ear. That's when I tell him he was holding the stylus upside down, and when he sat back down and picked it up, he was holding it correctly that time. Oh my god, that's funny.
Got him!
In Photoshop, if you hold the Wacom stylus upside down, it automatically uses the eraser tool instead of whatever tool you've selected. I know for a fact that Joe knew this, since he's the one that taught it to me, but that day it just didn't dawn on him for whatever reason. Somebody finally got the better of old Joe. I don't know, some days the brain just doesn't engage. I have those days, trust me. Save to local machine. Fresh from today, it's not been a good day. Although long out of IT, you get known as the bloke who knows about computers, and I'm used to it, mostly. A colleague came to my desk, we'll call her Fran, to protect the guilty. Wait a minute, did I already read this before? I feel like I've read about Fran before. Let's press on. Background: we have a program we use where we access a server with files on it. If you save the files locally, you're damned. Sadly, you need management access to see where the file is saved to prevent people changing files down the line. You're IT people. I obviously don't need to explain further. Fran: "I've lost some scanning. I can view it on Program X, but no one else has access to it." Me: "Right, I'll need to come up to your machine to find them." The files were nowhere to be found on the local machine. I looked in the usual places. I scanned something to see where it was being saved to. I checked that she was logged in as herself at the time to see if it was someone else's profile on the C drive. Fran: "By the way, does it make a difference that I wasn't at my machine at the time? I was using Felipe's?" One more question to add to the list of stupid questions to ask users. So, she knew she wasn't at her own machine. I guess she never realized that she was saving to her local machine? I guess she thought everything was just going right onto the network? Strange. I know I've read a story about Fran before because I remember that the name Fran and that line about protecting the guilty. So this is a user that's been on here quite a bit, I bet. I plugged it in 2 times so it would be twice as fast. It's been a while since I've had a chance to post. The labor market is tight on supply, which means as a consultant, my inbox is constantly full of work requests. And even though I've increased my rates for new customers by 50%, business seems more than happy to still pay my hourly rate. There's no way the market can sustain hourly rates like this, but I'm going to make the cash while it lasts, even if that means 80-hour weeks. Anyway, just had a job ghost on me tonight. I'll keep the deposit. Thank you very much, wanker guy who let me drive the whole way to a job site to find the place locked up tight. So here's a funny short one I recently ran into. And as always, no matter how you market yourself, no matter how much branding you splash over everything, no matter if your name is actually James Bond, if you're an IT consultant, you'll also be known as the IT guy. Introduction. I'm doing some on-site project management for one client. Standard equipment and network refresh stuff being handled by another contractor. My job is to keep them on time and on task. I don't get the ins and outs of why 2 contractors to do the job, but they're paying me an inflated hourly rate, so none of my business. The contract specs are crystal clear. The other company handles all the technical stuff and I manage the timeline. In fact, there's a clause that I'm not even supposed to touch the equipment. Maybe it's security, maybe it's some government funding BS, maybe someone's brother's making a ton of cash on a weird deal. It doesn't really matter to me. But those are the terms. Don't touch the stuff. The network is down. I'm at my desk looking at the timeline, checking on some deliveries, and about ready to hop on a status update meeting. The job is going well. Despite the supply chain, we're still getting deliveries more or less on time. I've got to move around a few things, but it looks like we're going to finish on time and under budget. That is, as long as the clowns the other contractor had don't F it up. The first set of guys were fine. They were seasoned system admins who came in and did all the backroom stuff over a long weekend. Looked good, and their supervisor gave me a full briefing. But for some reason, maybe the market or just saving a few bucks, they fielded the bomb squad of techs to deploy workstations. I mean, these guys were so dumb, there was no way they could ever figure out they were dumb kind of stupid. They literally had flip books of every step to follow, including how to take the machine out of the box and where to stage the mouse and keyboard. I've never seen anything like this, although, but whatever it is, isn't rocket science getting these things up and running. They seem to be doing an adequate job meeting the goal at the end of the day. That is until one guy screams, "The internet's broken!" Outrage, outrage. It's the middle of the workday, and this company is going full tilt with sales. The location is almost fully staffed, and of course one of the big sales guys has a 5 p.m. deadline to get something to a client. After a few minutes of confusion, one of the company leads comes into the conference room where I've set up shop and asks me if I can take a look. They can't find their internal guy anywhere. Now, I'm generally pretty helpful, even if it isn't in my scope of work, but here I'm a bit hesitant. The contract said I'm not to touch the equipment. I'm there for project management only, so I tell the lead that I'm not comfortable unless he can give me something in writing. IT guy: "Look, the contract is pretty specific here." Lead: "Is there anything you can do? We have a call in for our guy, but no one knows where he is, and these other contractors have no idea what's going on." IT guy: "If you can give me something in writing." Lead: frustrated: "All the brass are off site today and I'm in charge, but I don't have much authority. There's going to be a revolt in about 15 minutes unless we do something now. I'll write you an email or something as long as you can just maybe take a look. Don't do anything, but just see if you can get a handle on what we need to do." Okay, good enough for me. Send me that email. Well, that was easy. I start by taking a look in the back room. Switches and firewall all look stable. Servers are all running. But then I notice a few of the switches have a ton of activity, like flashing more than the Christmas tree in the town square kind of action going on. That's weird. I asked the lead to take me to where drop 47 is because that switch is acting particularly strange from just the optics of it. He starts looking around at the plates and gets some lady to help him, but whoever did the wiring job actually kept the drops in sequential order. Nice job, guy, wherever you are, which made it easier to track down. This takes us to an area where these contractors are staging the new equipment. Gomer and his pals are just sitting around playing on their phones, presumably because they can't complete their current staging job until the network's back up. I asked one guy to show me how they have the staging area wired, and he points over to a mess of cables, routers, hubs, and other network equipment. I start tracing back all the various cables to find one router jacked into 2 sequential drops. Well, that's the issue right there. Simple broadcast storm. IT guy: "Hey, why did you do that?" Gomer: "The internet was slow, so we plugged it in again to make it go faster." Oh my god. Oh, these idiots brought down an entire network for almost an hour because they lack basic tech skills. I tell the lead what needs to be done, and once we clear the loop and power cycle the affected switches, everything's back up and running. Just in time for their in-house IT team to come busting through the main door. Back to work. I go back to the conference room where I have my ad hoc office and complete whatever I was doing for that day. At 5, the lead comes in and thanks me profusely. Apparently whatever the deal was with the deadline was a huge deal, and they were just able to transmit all the files right before a contractual deadline, that if it was missed, would have cost them a huge chunk of revenue. Of course, no good deed goes unpunished. Apparently one of the in-house guys caught wind that I helped troubleshoot the problem and made a fuss. Don't know why or his motivation. Glad I had the email and the lead, to his credit, have my back when legal came to investigate. It was a mild pain, but the lead has given me multiple good references since, so maybe it was worth it. About a week after the job concluded, I got an unexpected knock at my door. It was a delivery driver with a nice gift basket. Surprised, I looked for a note. Turns out it was from the lead, and the note had a simple inscription: "Thanks, IT guy." That's pretty cool. So, it sounds like a government job to me, or some company that's tied in with government contracts or affiliations in some way. When we used to do government construction contracts, I know that, not only did you have your union stuff where only carpenters could touch carpentry, stonemasons could touch stonemasonry. You didn't touch a wire, you didn't touch a pipe, You didn't touch anything that wasn't in your specialized field without big penalties. And that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds about the same. Well, thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. Hope you've had a great day. And would you do me a favor if you get a second? Can you click like on this video, subscribe to the channel maybe, and click that little bell icon so you don't miss the fat guy with the beard telling you stories. See ya.